Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. It looks like we do have a few people here. So remember, if you want to add anything to the chat, you can. And do let me know in the chat that you can hear me okay. That helps me out. So, welcome. We are talking about new year, new progress notes. What are some of the trends that I have been seeing that are helping therapists get their progress notes done and done well? And where are these going to be going in 2025? Because I see these things progressing, and I think you'll be surprised that a couple of them seem like they're in conflict with one another. So it's pretty interesting and pretty fun. If you don't know who I am, hi, I'm Dr. Maelisa McCaffrey, author of the new book, Stress-Free Documentation for Mental Health Therapists. And I am here to help you with all of your paperwork needs to make it less stressful. Okay, so we will do this Q&A style. If you want to ask questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. You do have to be subscribed to ask a question, and that's so we don't get weird bots. And you have to wait 5 minutes, so just know that. All right, but for those of you who are watching the recording or on now, I am going to talk about a few different things. So number one, we're going to talk about trends in AI. So how is that helping therapists? What does that look like in 2025? It looks fairly different than it did even 2 years ago when I first started talking about it. Time management tips. And then we're also going to talk about when is it okay to use paper and ditch electronics and ditch the technology. So, all right, let's dig in with AI. So a couple of the trends that I have been seeing is number one, that more people are using AI for progress notes. So therapists who are not tech savvy are trying it out as a last ditch effort to help with time management and with making progress notes more simplified. Therapists who were distrustful of it in the beginning are seeing it more commonly now, and they're trying it out. So I'm seeing a lot of therapists test AI and start using it. I would say pretty overwhelmingly, the people who do use it tend to like it. That at least is the experience that I am hearing about. I can only think of a couple times where I've talked with a therapist and they have tried an AI platform and then said, absolutely, I don't want to use it at all. I've definitely heard people say, I don't like this platform or I don't like the way it does this one thing. But I have not typically heard people say that they absolutely hate it and don't want to use it. So AI is here to stay. Now, within that, one of the trends that I'm seeing is that now some EHRs, some electronic health records, are starting to incorporate AI into their documentation, into their EHR. What does that mean, and what does that look like for you as the end user? That means that you absolutely should be notified about this and will be notified about this. And for now, it's an optional feature. So it doesn't mean that it's automatically turned on and that you have to use AI. And in fact, in some cases, you might have to pay extra to use AI, just like how a lot of people do with Wiley treatment planners or other resources that are integrated within an EHR. But it's becoming more common. And I did call this out, I think, last year, where I was saying, to me, this is the natural trend. This is what I see happening across the board. Is that, it doesn't really make sense for therapists to be logging into two separate systems and, into the AI platform to get the notes done and then copying and pasting and logging into their EHR and putting those notes there. The natural relationship is that they would start to combine, and that is what's happening. So what that means for you is that your EHR may not be doing this yet. They may be beta testing it and you may not be aware of that, or you might have some options there. Again, it's always optional. It's usually something you can either turn off or turn on, or might have to pay extra for. If you are in a place where, in a position to practice using this in your EHR, if you have access to it, I would recommend trying it out and give them feedback, because Not all of these AI platforms are created equally. You can check out my reviews. I am preparing for more reviews right now. More will be coming out in the next few weeks, and updated ones to the old ones I have. But you can check out that playlist. We'll add that information below, and once the recording is up. But let's say, you're using, so some of these that are not as good are talking with these tech companies and actually being integrated into these EHRs. So try it out. If it doesn't work for you, if it makes mistakes, if it is too wordy, if it adds a bunch of things you don't need, if it doesn't make sense to you, if it sounds clinical but doesn't make sense to you, give your EHR in that AI platform all of that feedback. Also, even if you're not using an AI that's integrated into an electronic health record, give these AI companies feedback. They want it, they love it, they want to hear from you. And at this point in time, they're new enough and they're changing rapidly enough that they desperately are seeking your feedback and often will even meet with you. So if you try one of these platforms out and you're like, some of it's working, but I can't get this to work for me, reach out to them, ask them questions. They want you to use it. They want you to try and break it and test it and give them all of the negative feedback and all of the positive feedback. So one of the best things you can do is communicate with them, let them know what you like about it, what you don't, and what you want to change. And see if they'll meet with you to go over those things. That is something that I think 2 years from now, these companies, the founders or like some of the people who are really integrated in creating the software are not going to have the time or be able to meet with you personally. Now, a lot of them do. Or they're making the time because they're in that startup phase. So use it. This is a really unique time in the history of AI because it's so new, and you can have influence as a therapist. AI is coming, it's being used. So please use your influence and provide feedback to all of these companies as much as you can, because this is the year to do it. You will not be able to do this 2, 3, 4 years from now. You can do it now. We have very special access to the people who are starting up these programs that are going to last indefinitely. I say all of that along with one of the other trends I see in AI is that some of these companies now are moving beyond just doing progress notes or treatment plans or like records for you to actually providing something for the client. And so this is another thing that I predicted that I thought would be really cool, which is where this AI platform now is not just a platform you log in to record your notes. It's a platform where you can also click to send your client a reminder about something, or a form, or a handout, or a quiz to complete during the week. Your client can then do that. And because it's an AI platform, you don't really need like the technology of an AI platform to do something like that, to just send your client a quiz or a handout, right? But what an AI platform can do is then analyze that information over time, over weeks, or summarize the information for you and present it to you so that it can then potentially be integrated in the progress note that you end up creating for the next or the previous note. It can document it, and it can just give you that clinical information. And this is where I think we can use AI clinically to not only help with documentation, but to actually improve clinical services by having these touch points with clients who might need it. Maybe not all of your clients, but I'm sure many of you have clients where that would be very helpful to have these options throughout the week. And then, or maybe you're already doing that. I work with a lot of people who are already doing that and are spending a lot of time doing things like entering information into spreadsheets or checking up on the information that they're having clients send them. And if you could have an AI already summarize that information for you, and track it and include it in the note without you having to do anything, that's really awesome. So these are just some options. As always, I'm not saying AI is necessarily good or bad. I think those could be great things. And I really want to reiterate this, they will be better with your feedback. And so if you are willing to play around with this stuff, to test it out, to try it, Don't just try it. Give these companies excessive feedback about what it is that you're doing. They want it. I promise you, the negative and the positive. They want it, your requests for what could be more helpful. They don't know that. These are not therapists who are starting these companies. They're tech people. And they're tech people who either have a heart for mental health or who want to be smart about starting a business and find that this is a legitimate need, and that this is an ongoing need, right? And so it makes good business sense to have this type of a company. Regardless, they want it to be good and they want it to be useful. So, they cannot do that just by watching my reviews on YouTube. That does help, or by talking with me. They need your feedback. So please, please, please give it to them. They want it, I promise you, and you won't have that level of access 2 years from now. You just won't. All right, so moving away from AI, let's talk about some time management strategies. And the reason I'm using this in the context of the new year is that I really have seen things change over the last few years. So I've been consulting with therapists on documentation for over a decade now, and things shifted a lot during COVID when so many therapists, almost 100% of people, went online. And since that time, I've actually seen things change quite dramatically in the reverse. So people were typically open to being online before, but not excited about it. And then they were required to do it. And then a lot of therapists fell in love with it. And even if you're a therapist who really likes telehealth and being online and you've fully embraced that, it doesn't mean you've gotten rid of your pen and paper. And I've actually seen a trend where more therapists are going back to paper. And so that has been fascinating to see. So we're going to talk about that's going to actually be like a whole other sub point within time management. So heads up on that. But for general time management, I've seen a lot of things shift, and it's been fascinating. So number one, more collaborative documentation, and that is due to the combination of being online. It does feel easier to take notes, because I can do that right now and you don't necessarily see that I'm writing. Or maybe you're typing, it's not as obvious. And so I find that therapists who even didn't take notes before the pandemic, then they've been doing online sessions. And whether or not they're online now, they are now used to taking notes during sessions. And so taking notes during sessions is actually becoming more common than it was before. And this is all just my anecdotal evidence, but based on the people I'm working with. And it's a really common practice. So if you take notes during sessions, you're just like everybody else, I promise you. And so, I think that has led to the openness to AI, because if you're already doing that, you're a little bit more open to having something listening in. Regardless, that leads to more collaborative processes, and I think is a huge benefit. And it can be a huge time saver to take a lot of your notes while you are in session. If you're doing that, if you are a therapist who takes notes to yourself during session, here is one of my big tips, okay? Because as many therapists as take notes during sessions will tell me, and those are just my random personal notes, right? They don't make sense. They're not good enough to be a formal progress note. They're very informal. And so then they have to use that information to translate it into the formal progress note, whatever that looks like. If you can eliminate that step, you will save yourself a ton of time and a ton of effort. So what I have recommended people do is create a section. Whether you just do random notes on a piece of paper, you can put a title, a heading above that, or whether you do this electronically and you're going to copy paste this somewhere, title it in session notes. And as soon as you do that, it kind of shifts how you're thinking about those notes, because it's okay for them to feel less formal. And they will only be a part of the ending progress note, right? But that way you don't have to waste your time editing all of this information and trying to put it into sentences and trying to make it sound great and trying to make it sound clinical. Just copy paste that information or take a picture of that information if it's on paper, and include it in your progress note, and boom, be done. And just call it in session notes. And that way you don't have to edit it at all. Every once in a while, you might have to edit it. That's fine. But if you are not editing that 90% of the time and then still able to use it if it's helpful information in your progress note, I guarantee not only will your progress notes be faster, they will feel like less effort. So I challenge you to try the in-session notes. If you are truly doing in-session notes, just call it what it is and just include that information. Don't edit it and pretty it up. Okay, the other thing that I want to share as a top time management tip here before we get into using paper is boundaries. So one thing that consistently comes up when I run my paperwork catch-up groups, when I consult with people, when I talk with almost any therapist in any setting, is that one of the biggest barriers to getting notes done is holding time boundaries with clients. What does that look like? Typically, it's two things. It's not ending sessions on time. And so you let your sessions go over, and then you only have a couple minutes in between sessions. So you don't have enough time to do a note, or you have other things that need to fill up that time, like getting some water. The other thing is that you have time blocks in your schedule for clients, and then you've done a great job, you followed my advice, and you've put in time blocks for writing progress notes or doing other administrative tasks. And then a client needs to cancel, or a client is running late for whatever reason or has something happen. And then you shift that person into your admin time. And so again, it's kind of like doing that is breaking your promise to yourself that I will give myself the time I need. I have put this in my calendar because it is time I legitimately need to do other work tasks. You have a lot of work outside of seeing clients, right? You have to allot time for that. If you don't allot time for it, you will create a situation for yourself to burn out 100% of the time. And the first sign of that, the first thing to go, I promise you, will be your notes. And then other things will go, like emails or answering voicemails or paying your taxes or updating your financials or marketing or whatever. But the first thing is probably going to be your progress notes. So that's your first signal. Ooh, I haven't held my boundary, or I am not creating enough time in my schedule for what I need to get these things done. So paying attention to those two things. If you make that like your one goal for 2025 and do that consistently and check in with yourself about that on a consistent basis throughout 2025, I promise you, you will have more time to get your administrative tasks and to get to your progress notes done. So hold those boundaries. Typically, when I work with people and they, start making some shifts in what they're doing, and then a couple months later they start falling off again, or progress notes aren't happening. It's been a whole week and they haven't gotten their notes done. It's usually that they have let those boundaries slide again, and they have started letting clients, and it's not the client's fault. It's just that, clients don't know. They say, well, can you meet at this other time? And instead of you saying, no, I can't, you say, yes, I can. And then you don't shift something else to still allot for that hour or however much time of admin time or progress notes time. So you have to do that. And it truly is, it can sound a little cliche or silly or hyperbolic, but it genuinely is self-care. You have to have time to get these things done. It is a part of your schedule. When you think about how many clients you can see in a week, you have to consider all of the other things that you do with clients and put that time in your schedule along with the actual client hours. You can have flexibility and do those things that, it doesn't have to be like in your office or at the same time that you see clients. It could be on Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock, but it has to be a time that you are valuing and protecting and doing consistently. So that's like my biggest tip, and that is free, and you can start doing that today, right? So that is why it is always the tip that I give out anytime I do a talk or a podcast interview or anything like that. And it's also a tip that I know you need to hear more than once and you need to be reminded of. So here's your reminder. Okay, let's talk about the other trend I've been seeing related to time management, which is ditching electronics and using paper. So alongside AI, I have also seen a dramatic increase in people using paper, and I've actually been recommending it more. I also find myself doing that. So using paper can actually be a huge time saver. If you are spending time, if you are the person who's writing a lot of notes by hand, because that feels good to you, because it works for you, because you've always done it, whatever it is, if that's how you naturally work and it helps you, then there's no need to change that. We don't have to change that. You can still have an electronic health record. I still recommend it. It's still great for all the practice management things. I still think you need that. And if writing notes by hand or taking notes to yourself during sessions by hand is useful, let's work with that. Because honestly, look, I have spent literally 10 years crafting what I think is a really, really good progress note template right now. And the reason I think it's so good is that it's fairly foolproof, meaning it's audit ready, but still personalized to the client and still personalized to you because I guide you in how to do that. It is quick and easy through checkboxes, but detailed checkboxes. So they don't look like checkboxes or drop-down menus, etc. It walks you through all the specific things, okay, that you need to have in a progress note. And if you click to your EHR, log in, and just click through those things, you can complete that note in about 3 minutes, and people do. And it's still a good note. And if you had that exact same template printed out in front of you and you naturally write during your sessions, and let's say you include, like I said at the very beginning, I gave you that that tip for the in-session notes, having in-session notes as a section in your progress notes. So any notes that you want to jot down, you're doing that. Then you can just circle, you can cross off, you can check off things, you can make the template look kind of however you want, you can complete it really easily. That's still probably faster than going into the EHR and logging in, clicking through, and clicking all the boxes. So if that works for you, do it. I'm not recommending start doing paper if you don't do paper. I am saying if you really like paper and you're naturally doing paper and you're already writing notes to yourself, but it's just not on a progress note template, why not just print out the template, write your notes there? It's probably going to be faster for you. And this is your permission that if you do like paper, go with it. There is no rule that you can't have a hybrid record. You can have these progress notes, and then I still never want to save paper or hang on to paper. And so you can still take a picture of it and upload that to your EHR. Or if you don't use an EHR to your computer, you can still use these electronic means to save the information, but physically do the note on paper. And that often people, when they talk to me about it, it's like they're confessing, like, I'm still using paper, or, oh, I really like to use paper. Own it. Go for it. It doesn't mean you're a dinosaur. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And there's a decent chance it might even be faster than doing an electronic record. So why go through all the hassle of building out this template in your electronic record when you can still use that practice management system for doing intake paperwork, having things signed electronically, you doing telehealth sessions, doing billing, being able to run reports on the things that you're doing. It's still very beneficial. Like actually charging clients, all of that. You'd still have to have multiple other systems if you didn't have an electronic health record. You'd have to have all these other systems to charge people, to see people online, to track your billing and track your services, and house client information, all of that. It's still useful, and use the paper. Totally do it. If it comes naturally, if it works, you have my permission and actually my recommendation to do it. All right. That covers everything I have. So we have some questions in the chat. Feel free to add yours if you have them. Now is the time. It takes there's a little bit of delay here. So add your question now so that we make sure I get to it. You do have to be subscribed to ask a question. So subscribe now because you have to be subscribed for 5 minutes. And if you can't for some reason, then like try logging out and logging back in, or closing YouTube and opening it up again. All right, so questions we have here. Sarah said, taking electronic notes or handwritten notes is okay in session. Absolutely. And like I said, most people, well, I can't say whether or not it's most therapists, but I can tell you it's a lot. It is a lot of therapists. There's varying degrees. Like some people write a lot during client sessions. Some people just jot down a few words. But this is really common. I know, I have been in IFS therapy personally myself, and I think this is an IFS thing. I don't have IFS training, but my therapist is writing things down, and I've heard from other IFS therapists they're writing things down during that time. It is a natural part of a lot of therapeutic processes, so go for it. It's totally okay, and own it. And this is one of those things where, if a lot of therapists take notes during session and have never even thought it's weird or never thought about it, right? But if you are someone where you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that, that would be very helpful. It's okay to talk to clients about it and ask them about it, or give them a heads up, hey, yeah, I just want to let you know, I typically take some notes to myself during sessions. This just helps me stay on track, or helps me remember things later, or helps me get my notes done. But if you ever have questions about those notes, or if they ever feel distracting, please let me know. And you can always check in with people about that. And then it's really helpful. You can always tie that in to this other piece that we talked about with ending sessions on time, where maybe at the end of the session, you can say, you know what, let me check out, I wrote this down. Does that sound like that was really a poignant part of the session for you? Or I wrote this down that you wanted to cover. Do you want to talk about that next week? You can bring it back in and make it feel like a more natural part of the session, rather than trying to hide it. That would be my recommendation. All right, let's see. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Sarah, yes, I've done this for years. Let clients know I'll be taking notes when we have our first session, so it's no surprise. Exactly. I do think that's helpful. And I would say, when I have done research on collaborative documentation, you might have heard me mention this before, but one of the things that came out of some of that research was that clients whose therapists used collaborative documentation, which is a therapist literally writing notes with the clients, they often mentioned that it really helped to destigmatize the whole process for them, because they thought their therapist secretly thought that they were crazy. And when they were able to see what was in the progress notes, or when their therapist talked to them about the notes, or when they were able to help create the notes, it was like, oh, you just think I'm a person dealing with this problem, and it's not that big a deal, and you don't see me as crazy. And so I think that's really, really, to me, that is one of the things that has always stuck with me, that we need to remember that as much work as we do to both destigmatize therapy, and as mindful as we are about the fact that it is still very stigmatized, and that is why our confidentiality practices are so important and are different than that of other healthcare professionals, right? It is very important to be in touch with that, and to remember that secrecy, that confidentiality, which can also be considered secrecy, does contribute a little bit to the continued stigmatization and hiding of all of this information. And so the more that we can be open about what we're doing with our client, right? We can't maybe change everything, but you can change that personal relationship you have with that client, and letting them know about this process and what you're doing, and letting them know that they have the right to access it, because they do. They do. Anything you're writing down about them, they have the right to access, pretty much, in a nutshell. And so that's okay. That doesn't have to be scary to us. I know that in a lot of our professions, and in a lot of our settings, that is seen as terrifying, and it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't have to be. And it especially should not be terrifying to think of talking with your client about what you're writing about them. They share very personal things with you. It's a very special relationship, and it's okay to talk to them about that. We have other things we can get into about that, but I want to make sure that we talk about that. Okay. Other people said, Khaleesi said, I love paper. Thank you for giving me permission. You're welcome. And then Khaleesi also asked, should we scan the paper into the EHR if we do have paper? Yeah, I think so. All of my answers to any question is always it depends. So if it's a random thing and you did a random genogram just because that's how you frame things, but it doesn't really need to be in the record, you don't mean to save it, you could always just shred it, right? But if it's something that feels important to you, or if you are just writing those random notes and you don't want to have to clean them up, that's okay. Just identify that they are random in session notes. They're in session notes. They're not formalized interventions. They are your notes from in session. And then, just scan them in the record. So either scan, I would say scan or shred is my favorite. But, if you want to be super old school and have files, do that. Have your files, put them in a file cabinet. That's cool. Just keep them secure. Okay. Let's see. Sarah said, great reminder to tell new clients about note taking. Yeah. And regardless of how you do it, right? So even if you're not doing it prolifically in session, still talking to them about it. Lisa asked, can you talk about the best way to write treatment plan notes as well as how to incorporate into progress notes? Yeah. Just like we've been talking about, Lisa, which is do it in session. Treatment plans, especially, progress notes, I can see an argument for with certain clients, not doing them collaboratively, or for maybe even doing part of the note with the client and then part of the note after the fact. Maybe you don't want to sit there with them while you check off all the interventions and maybe they don't care about that part, right? But treatment plans, absolutely, there's no reason to not do a treatment plan in session. It is literally intended to be you and the client deciding what you're working on. Why would we ever do that without the client in session? And so we have those conversations with people. We talk to people about it. But then to literally be on the same page with them, literally show them a paper and say, is this what you mean? Because a lot of times when we talk with people, we think we're creating these goals together, but, I don't know about you, but if you've ever asked a client at the end of a session what they thought was important or what stuck with them or their interpretation of what was going to happen next, a lot of the times it's different from what you think they're going to say. And so doing treatment plans, physically writing them out, whether that's typing, whether that's writing on paper, whatever it is, but actually writing treatment plans with people in session helps to alleviate that, right? Because you are able to actively work on that together, identify any miscommunication, identify any limitations. This is a great time to say, yeah, we have to write it this way for insurance. Blame the insurance company for the stupid way you have to write this goal, right? And I say that, kind of somewhat facetiously, but like we have to write it in this smart format. And I know it might seem silly, but this is what insurance wants to see. It's okay to say that, and take the time to do it with them. So I highly recommend just doing all of them in person, in session, with clients. And then as far as incorporating it in your progress notes ongoing, really, if you have a treatment plan, ideally that is guiding the treatment you're doing. And so then your progress notes are just documenting all of the treatment to meet those treatment goals. Even if you're not working with insurance, that's the intention of a treatment plan, right? And so if you're not working with insurance, you don't have to worry about writing the goal in smart format. You don't have to be super strict about when you redo the goal or check in on the goal. You have more flexibility. That's awesome. And it's still helpful to talk with people about what they want to achieve in therapy or what they want how they want their life to look or be. They're not paying you because they want everything to be the same, right? Nobody starts therapy saying, I hope that absolutely nothing in my life changes, and I would just like to sit here and chat with you and pay you money. There's typically a lot of barriers that they've overcome just to get to therapy. So typically people really want something to change or something big in their life has happened that they have to manage. And so they do want to see a result from being in therapy, and asking them what result they want to see is so, so important and helpful, because sometimes you have to say, I can't guarantee that result, or I see a lot of my clients have that result, but not in 3 months. It might take many months for us to get there, right? It's a chance for you to talk to them about the whole process and how it works, and their expectations, and to manage those expectations. And then also to provide some hope, because some clients come in they do come in, but they still come in very hopeless. And, on the flip side, you can offer hope by doing those treatment plans and by literally identifying what it is that you want to achieve together. So then in your regular progress notes, it's really just updating those treatment goals. So what did you do to work towards the treatment goals? And if you find yourself frequently not working towards those treatment goals or talking about other random things, that is simply information for you that either I need to talk with my client about, hey, like I noticed we haven't really talked about these treatment goals or about these topics or these things you wanted to work on in a couple months or over the last few weeks. Do you think we want to change what it is that you want to work on now that we've been seeing these, one another for this amount of time? Is it that you want to change something? Or would you like to go back to that? And how can I help you stay on track? Or how can I help you get back to that? How can we do that together? Depending on how you work, that conversation might look a little different. But it's one of those two things. Either you're off track and need to help the client get back on track with the goals, because that's your job, right? That is your job as the therapist, is to help guide this person. And it could also be that their needs have changed. And so your role is to say, okay, actually, we had these goals, but yeah, like it seems like things have changed. So let's shift course and make this our new focus. And so anytime you see yourself staying away from the treatment goals, not really addressing them, feeling like you need to make things up to actually like update progress, then note that internally, and check in with people about the goals after that. All right, let's see. I love music and dancing said, how long should progress notes be? That totally depends. There is no one length. I would say if you check out my book, I give a whole bunch of templates. I give examples there, and those could be 6 sentences. If you have 6 really good, succinct, clear sentences that cover exactly what even an insurance company needs to see, that might be a good enough progress note. Or you might have a template that has all these different sections to help remind you of all the things you want to cover. And that template might be 3 pages long, but it's all checkboxes and drop downs and stuff. So it doesn't take you a long time to do. So the length of the progress note really does not matter. But I do give some guidance about, okay, interventions, like how many interventions do you want to include? You include whatever interventions you did. But if I gave you my 12-page list of interventions, you might do a whole page's worth of interventions in one session for some people. You don't need to put all of that stuff, right? So it's really about I do give you templates and guidance. So I would say check out the book or check out the private practice paperwork crash course that I have for free. I give you some guidance there. Beyond that, what I think is more helpful is having some questions for yourself. Like, what was a big takeaway from the session? What progress has this person made since the last time I saw them? What are the continued challenges that this person is experiencing? What are the problems that this person continues to experience in their life? And if you like to use strength-based language, that's okay. But don't forget that people are seeing you because they have a problem. And it's okay to document that they have a problem. Because like I said, they're not coming to you because everything is great in their life most of the time. They're coming to you because they do want to see a change. So document that and document it accurately. And oftentimes people do have barriers and things that are negatively influencing them. And that is a disservice to them to pretend like those don't exist. So do document those things. It doesn't mean you're not viewing your client from a strengths-based perspective. It just means you're being honest about the barriers that they're experiencing, and then also document their strengths, right? So having questions for yourself, like, even if you have a bunch of check boxes, in this very personalized way that I recommend, and they're very detailed and they're wonderful. I still say go through all the check boxes and then say, is there anything else that was really important that I feel like needs to be in here to capture the session? And then that's what you write. But then you only have to spend your time and effort writing that one thing. And if nothing comes to mind, that's okay. Then move on. And hopefully, most of the time, there isn't something that comes to mind. But if something does, it typically is very clear what might be missing. And so that's what you can spend your time focusing on. So, length of the notes doesn't matter. What does matter is covering the very basic topics. I also have another video about that, about I think if you search what goes in a progress note, I give you those categories. Like, what are the categories of things that you want to have? So that's more important. And based on the session, based on the client, based on how well you work, on how you write, the length will vary. But what's more important is, did you cover those particular topics? All right. Which session, Sarah said, which session for a treatment plan? Whatever session applies. So if you can do it during the intake, great. Most people can't because you're just getting to know the person, right? So totally fine to do it after your intake. Many therapists take 1 to 4 sessions to do an intake. So it might be the 5th session where you do the treatment plan. It might be the 2nd session. If you do work with insurance, do it by the 2nd session. Don't start doing therapy with people before you have a treatment plan if you work with insurance, because you want to have that in place to guide the therapy that you're billing for. And then you might need to then check in on those goals or on the treatment plan in general. I say at least annually, but it might be quarterly. So if you work with Medicare or Medicaid, I do recommend checking in on the goals at the very least. Maybe not redoing the whole treatment plan, but at least checking in on the goals and documenting that every 3 months. If you don't work with those companies, think every 6 months, because things happen over every 6 months that might actually adjust the goals you're doing. Let's see. Khaleesi said, if we use paper and we're audited, do we just write that it was written by hand, or one date and a different date for when it was added into the EHR? So that depends on what you do. So if you have paper and you're only using the paper, let's say you're doing this hybrid method. So you have your EHR, which has all the client information, but the actual progress notes, you're like, yes, Maelisa gave me permission to, to use paper. I love paper. I'm printing out templates and I'm just doing it by paper. Sign and date those. And it's really easy to do when you use paper because you usually do complete the notes that same day. And typically right after that session. So sign and date them. And then that is the date that they're done. It's that simple. If you take a picture of the paper, or let's say you use that in-session notes feature, but you don't want to use the whole template and print all of that out and have all that paper going on, and then you just upload something to the EHR, then yes, you can just document that, it was written on the date of session and, but saved in the EHR on whatever date. And then if you are uploading things after the fact, so you might also be saying, okay, well, if I have all this paper, then I have an audit or any kind of records request. Most of the time, what you're going to do nowadays is then upload those forms, those papers to the EHR as like a PDF attachment. And then the whole file will be like a zip file or something that you'll download and then, give to whomever is requesting those records. And so that's fine. All you have to do is say, progress notes, and I would just put the date range as the name of that file. And it would have, 25, if you saw 25 sessions, maybe it's 200 sessions, however many it is. But that's how I would name the file and then just upload it to the EHR that way. And you don't really need to offer any other explanation than, all progress notes are completed on paper. So, less is more often with a lot of these explanations. And let's see. I love music and dancing. Said, I'm a new practitioner. I'm wondering if therapists are using only paper in private practice and not an EHR. Yes, there are still therapists who only use paper. Most people, I would say nowadays, use either an EHR all the time or they use a hybrid record, meaning that they have some paper and then they have the EHR on hand as well. That's what I see most of the time. But there are people who use only paper, and that's still okay to do. It is a little, I would say it's okay to do. I wouldn't recommend it most of the time because it really is less secure at this point, and meaning that people can more easily access physical paper than they can what is housed in someone's electronic health record because of the level of protection. Someone breaks in, there's a flood, there's a fire, all these things, right? Think about all these fires going on in LA. If you have only paper records, you can't even go to your office or your home or wherever you keep these notes to find someone's phone number to let them know that you need to cancel a session or need to reschedule something. And so for that reason, I think it's highly valuable to have an electronic health record as like a practice management system for housing all the client data, and for doing payments and billing, and then being able to run reports and track things yourself. But you could use progress notes, I would say, and maybe treatment plans on paper can still be very helpful. And so if you have your hybrid record that way, if you do that, you can always look at maybe once a month, uploading all of the notes uploading all the paper into various client files. You could have an assistant come in and do that once a month. You could do it at the end when you close out a client's file, upload all the paper and then shred all the physical paper so that you're not hanging on to that indefinitely and you only have active clients. But those are all things to consider. All right, I don't see any other questions. So I do want to remind you, it's the new year. If you haven't reviewed your paperwork, if you're in private practice, it is good to do this annually. It does not have to be a ginormous task. We do a paperwork review challenge every year, and that is happening next week. So wait, is it happening next week or is it happening? It's happening in 2 weeks. Forgive me. It starts on the 20th, January 20th of 2025. So sign up for that. I will include the link in the description here. You can also, look for it on our website, Paperwork Review Challenge, QA Prep. And that guides you through every day for a week. You'll get an email that just has a quick 15-minute task you can do to update your paperwork. So it's literally 15 minutes a day for 5 days, and boom. Is that going to do a complete overhaul of all of your paperwork? No, of course not, because this is meant to be something you do quick and easily annually. So if you do that annually, you'll be able to keep your paperwork fairly well updated without it being a ginormous hassle. So check out the Paperwork Review Challenge. If you're watching this recording, if you have watched 47 minutes of this recording, in the future, you can still click on that link and we will have it set up after the fact as a DIY thing you can do at any point in time. But capitalize on that New Year energy and do schedule some time for yourself to do a little bit review of your paperwork. All right. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you for your engagement and your questions. It has been so awesome. Hopefully we'll see you in the Paperwork Review Challenge, and we are going to be back here next week for another YouTube Live. We will be talking about time and how long does it take to do a progress note, how long should it take, and all the things around that. So touching on a few points from today, but some new and different things. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day and happy writing.